Mr. Chair, we're live. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I call the meeting to order. My name is George Santos. I'm the Chair of the Police Services Board, and I'd like to welcome all members and guests today, December the 12th, 2022, to our Norfolk Police Services Board meeting. I'd like to remind everyone that our meetings are web streamed and televised. I'd like to ensure that your phones are on silent mode, to keep your camera on, and to mute yourself if speaking. And of course, remember that the unmuted individual, if you are speaking, to make sure it's on. If you're joining us virtually, please use Microsoft Teams. Raise your hand feature icon to be called upon and remove it after you finish speaking. So with that, I will call the meeting to order. And on the agenda, if everyone has a copy of the agenda in front of them, approval of the agenda and changes to the agenda. So do we have any changes to the agenda? Okay, so if I could add an addition, and that is I had our board administrator take a copy of a newspaper article that was printed in the Brantford Expositor this weekend. And this had to do with the Grand Area District School Board pausing ending a review. So what I will do is ask that we add this as information as of 9.3. So if we can just add that to the agenda, 9.3, just below 9.2, which is the information. And also look at the composition of the Police Services Board. Being that we have that amendment, can we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Okay. Councillor Federici. And do we have a seconder? Member Cruz. All in favor? Okay. Carried. Okay. Are there any disclosures of interest or declarations of interest? Seeing we have none, we can move on. Okay. Number 4, confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting. This is 4.1 of the Police Services Board on page 3 of the agenda. And I believe it starts with page 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. What I would like to do is just make mention of the confirmation of the minutes in the previous meeting is there are 2 resolutions. One resolution is in regards to Supervisor Jim Wilson. Bylaw enforcement was supposed to be invited, but unfortunately that has been put off to the month of either January or February, from what I understand from the Clerk's Department. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. So with that also, there were letters that were supposed to be sent out, and I believe that is resolution number 6. Those letters haven't been sent out, but they are prepared to go. So it's just a matter of sending them out under the Police Services Board letterhead, but they have been ready since, I believe, October. Give me 1 second. I believe it's the 7th. October the 7th. So hopefully they'll be out either today or tomorrow. Okay? So, ending that, we're ready in regards to the minutes. So, with that, do we have any errors or omissions? If not, I'm going to need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Board Member Van Houten, seconded by Member Cruz. All in favor? Perfect. Okay, we will move on to presentations. So we will start out first and foremost at 5.1, new board members, introduction. So Councillor from Ward 2, Linda, if you could be kind to just introduce yourself and give us a clear understanding of who you are and where you're from, please.
Okay, my name is Linda Vanden Drieschi. I'm from Ward 2. I actually reside very close to Langton. And I've been around a long time, served on many, many boards. and I have the privilege to be re-elected to serve on council of Norfolk. I've never worked with the Police Services Board, now granted I've had a ticket or two, but so we met graciously, I might add. But other than that, I'm here to serve and to learn as much as I can about the Police Services Board. Thank you.
Welcome. It's a great asset. Also, I understand Member Cruz, you have been appointed for another 4 years with Norfolk County.
Okay. I haven't notified yet, but I watched council. And that's what I am assuming. I think it got confirmed at the, it was council and committee, and then I think it got confirmed with.
I believe so, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. So there won't be any need for
Okay, notification.
notification,
All right.
or will there?
Obviously, there probably will be a letter or something.
I would assume a letter would come from the clerk's department.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Very good. Okay. So with that, being that we're talking about our membership, Vice Chair Huffman, we want to thank you once again for joining us at the Police Service Board and having your term renewed. I understand for 1 more year on the Police Services Board.
I believe it was 1 year. Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So welcome aboard. Thank you.
you.
And Member Van, my understanding is you're still a provincial board appointee until March.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. They asked for some information way back when, just maybe several months ago, so I haven't really anything since. So, but there's going to be some changes in word composition, so I'm not sure how that'll play out. But it's been one of the
Yes.
powers.
Okay, very good. So to the general public and to everyone here, this is our board. And of course, as everyone is aware, our Chief of Police is Chief Case, also referred to as Inspector Case, but we here in Norfolk County refer to Chief Case as our Chief of Police for Norfolk County with the OPP, and Staff Sergeant Morgan, and I understand Staff Sergeant Fox is also on board. Is that correct, Chief?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
very good. And then we're just newly appointed in the last several months.
Jeff was in
July, yes.
Andy Whitman shortly thereafter.
Okay, perfect. Okay, very good. Have I missed anything? If not, we'll continue on. Okay, so continue on with regards to the presentations. 5.2.
receive that information, Mr. Chair?
Sure. Okay, so we will need a motion. So it's motion by Vice Chair Huffman, seconded by Councilor. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to 5.2, financial services, staff-free police services budget. Board Administrator, do you want to just make mention that I understand that this is going to be held off?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the board. I have a colleague from in the Treasury Department coming in about a minute just to join us to give a little update. I'm not sure if they're going to virtually or in person, so just give me a second to locate them.
Okay, very good. Board Administrator, Mr. Platt, I just want to make sure, so the presentation with the financial services staff, this is the budget that will be in 2023?
Yes.
It will be finalized, or has it been finalized?
It's in the process of being finalized, the budget process. So I'm just going to get a hold of Michael. I think he's just delayed.
Okay.
I don't see David Tilley on the line either. Right.
So we have
Right here.
Sorry. So let's go to David's presentation and we'll come back to Michael.
Okay. Thank you very much. So Mr. Tilley, the floor is yours. Welcome to Norfolk County.
When do you want me to go?
if you could just, it looks like a podium, but let's use that as a podium if that's okay. This way we can all focus and see you. So welcome to Norfolk County. This is the Police Services Board, and that you have an opportunity to meet everyone.
Yes. Okay, I haven't really got a presentation. I've just kind of wanted to introduce myself because it's the first time I've been here since I've been assigned to Zone 4. So my name's Dave Tilley, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm a police service advisor with the now Inspector of Policing Division of the Ministry of the Solicitor General. And as I've said, I'm assigned to Zone 4. So Zone 4 includes Norfolk County Police Service Board of Detachment, along with several other municipal police services and other areas that are serviced by the OPP. I've been a police service advisor for the past 7 years. I did 5 years in Eastern Ontario, which is Zone 2. The COVID years, as I called them, in Zone 6, which was Southwest Ontario, and I've been assigned to Zone 4 since September of this year. My role relates mostly to the Minister's mandates under Section 3 of the current Police Services Act, so monitoring local and provincial issues and trends, providing information and advice to boards and chiefs, mainly in view of ensuring compliance with the Police Services Act and associated regulations. I also deliver orientation sessions to board members around your kind of roles and responsibilities, what boards do, etc., etc. So if you have new members, that's something we can maybe sort out in the new year for me to come down, and I can take you through that kind of process. So as I said, the vast majority of my role relates to this monitoring and providing advice and information to both the boards and chiefs or detachment commanders in regards to achieving that compliance. I do, however, want to provide a few parameters around that, in that myself and the ministry does not provide direction, and we do not endorse policy or actions of either the board or the chief of police. However, my attendance at these meetings generally is just in these functions, just seeing how things are going and provide as much assistance as possible. So with that, I do want to provide a quick update in regards to the Community Safety and Policing Act, which, as you all know, is on the kind of, dare I say, the legislative books, but is not yet in force. When it comes into force, it will replace the current Police Services Act, but I want to be very clear that until then, the Police Services Act remains in force, and so we are currently still under the status quo. The Ministry is working to complete the regulatory and other activities that are required to bring the CSPA into force, and that work is very much ongoing. With respect to the detachment board process, I did notice that you have that as a subject on your agenda, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the Ministry will be providing updates on that process as they become available. My understanding is that there was some correspondence with heads of council maybe a month or two ago indicating that that process was again now getting up and running. But we've been given assurances that once kind of an established timeline is in place for the CSPA implementation, that you will be given plenty of time to kind of go through that transition to ensure it's a smooth process. And I imagine that my role is going to be kind of pretty deeply involved in that. But again, well, until that's confirmed, I can't speak too much more about that. So that really is about it. I just wanted to provide that kind of quick update, unless there's any kind of questions.
Any questions to the board, members?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on the act, the timing of that, is that going to be, you feel like at the end of the new act, at the end of 2023, or?
Yeah, I think at the moment there's a very wide kind of date being given, and I believe that the ministers actually spoke about this publicly, kind of end of 2023, maybe into early 2024. But until that kind of, as they get closer and new regulations get kind of completed in more detail, they're hoping to narrow that gap. But at the moment, yeah, it's that kind of really wide window.
Yeah, just thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Tilley, just in relationship to the advice that you're asked for from boards, I just wondered, is it mainly the governance boards, mainly people wanting clarification?
It's mainly
how the act relates exactly to what they're doing.
Yeah, it's mainly around kind of clarifications regarding what the Act and the regulations require. Some of it does to do with kind of board functions, ensuring that any actions you take are in compliance with the Police Services Act and stuff like that. But I mean, I'll be sure to tell you whether it's within my remit or not if the question comes up. But yeah, it's mainly around those kind of areas.
So, Mr. Tilley, I have 2 questions. So, there hasn't been royal assent. We're looking then at the end of 2023.
It has had royal assent.
It has.
It just hasn't been given. It's not yet been proclaimed in force.
Okay.
So it's on the books. It just hasn't yet been said as of this date it will be enforced.
So then all Section 10 police boards,
Mm-hmm.
from what I understand, in reference to the councils or county councils,
Mm-hmm.
they have been asked to basically look at the minimum standards. So let's just say, for example, Norfolk County, and we'll speak of this further on, Norfolk County has decided to have 3 board members
Mm-hmm.
from Norfolk County,
Yeah.
1 provincial appointee and 1 appointee from council at large.
Mm-hmm.
So my question here is in reference to provincial appointees, and when looking at the Act and the way we're governed, is what I'm finding is we're going to have more government in reference to the Police Services Board than less government.
So I'm trying to. So are you talking about the requirements of Police Service Board appointments under the CSPA?
Yes.
Because there are no requirements yet for OPP boards. That only refers to municipal police service boards. So the structure of OPP detachable boards will be determined by the regulation, and that's why the ministry has come out to OPP areas and said, okay, can you give us a proposal for what you would like to see in your board? And I think there were some guidelines along the lines of saying there must be at least 20% provincial appointee and 20% community appointee. Again, I'm going from memory.
Yes, that's correct.
So nothing is in statute yet to say what OPP boards, how they must be structured. That will be in the regulation.
And the reason I ask that question is because when I go online and I look at the Police Services Board for Norfolk County, it's pretty straightforward. It says membership, the population of the County of Norfolk exceeds 25,000 according to the last enumeration of council, which is of course Norfolk County. And entered into a contract with the Ontario Provincial Police, which we have. The composition of the board is determined as a 5.
Yeah.
And it goes on that members include the head of municipal council. If the head chooses not to be a member of the board, another member of council appointed by the resolution of council, 1 member of council appointed by resolution of council, 1 person appointed by the resolution of council, who is neither a member of council nor an employee of the municipality, and 2 persons appointed by the lieutenant governor in council.
Yes.
That's how it stands right now.
Under the current Police Services Act, yes.
And that will continue on
until the Community Safety and Policing Act is in force.
Right.
Yes, and the determination is made about what OPP boards will look like. Yes.
So the recommendations that Norfolk Council have put forth, it's up to the minister to decide either yes or no.
Yes, it will be under regulation.
Okay.
But I'm not quite sure whether that will be a lieutenant governor regulation ministry one. I'd have to confirm. Yeah, but in essence, yes.
So really, at the end of the day, as long as there's 1 provincial appointee and or 2, they'll always have government representation.
Yeah.
Under Section 10 policing.
It depends. Well, there will be no such thing as Section 10 policing under the CSPA.
Okay.
But I think in essence, yes, as long as it all depends on the size of your board.
Okay. And the reason I ask that, because when I'm looking at the qualifications, I mean, the qualifications are fairly clear. Appointees to the Police Services Board shall be active members of the community with the general knowledge of police services, boards, the duties, responsibilities, and awareness of community safety issues and programs in their community. Members appointed to the province must be residents of Ontario, cannot be judges, justices of peace, or a current police officer, or a person who practices criminal law or defense counsel. So, of course, all that, again, will change.
And are you quoting from the current police service?
Yes.
There, yes.
Yeah.
Well, no, there are some, there is an area under the Community Safety and Police Services Act that does talk to what would disqualify you from possibly being a board member, and it's fairly similar. I think there might have been 1 or 2 additions, but I would have to pull it up and look at it, to be honest.
That's fair. Thank you very much, Mr. Tilley. Mr. Van Hoen, you had a question?
No, I think I'm okay.
just so I'm clear on it, so the councils were asked for their opinion on how they would like, in their judgment.
It was a they were asked for a recommendation, yeah.
Will it go that way? We just don't really know, for sure, because at the end of the day, when we see the final act, we will know if that flexibility is allowed for a council decision of that.
That's right.
It may not be though, it may be that they determine some other minimum.
That's right.
Is that correct?
That's right.
Am I wrong about that, or do you think?
I think what you've got to bear in mind is that because of the default will be a detachment board, there are areas within the province where there may be 12 municipalities that report to that detachment. So at some point, if all those municipalities can't come to some kind of consensus, then at that point, then yes, the province may need to make a decision about what that board looks like.
So in our situation, they may not, because, or they may be looking at, from a governance perspective, a whole slew of issues, like for example, diversity of boards, what's needed on boards. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yes, I mean, the province is going to be looking for consensus with local municipalities. So I really don't. Yeah, as long as I think those minimum guidelines are met around the kind of like the appointments and the 20%, then
Okay. Yeah.
It would take, put it this way, it would take a very brave minister to go against it, I would suggest. But like I said, that OPP policing across the province is very different. Like for example, when I was in Zone 2, I had 23 OPP boards compared to Zone 4, where I think I had 5, 6. So it's structured very differently. And then if you go up to Northern Ontario, there are detachments where they may ask 12, 13 municipalities. So it's going to look very different. And there may be detachments that have more than one board. The Act just sets out that the default is one board per detachment, but geographical things may require that there be more than one board in that detachment.
What's the new percentage? What's the percentage that's under the OPP provincially?
And it's just me this morning. I think so. 444 municipalities. I want to say it's around 320, maybe 330, something like OPP.
Like over 70% or something.
Yes, but again, don't quote me on that because I could be slightly out, but it's around that area. Yes, I didn't know I was going to be tested.
Actually, Mr. Tilly, the last time I read on Friday was there was 333 OPP detachments.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. That's what I understand.
Oh, okay, yeah, I was trying to remember.
Under Section 10 policing.
No, they're not all Section 10. Some would be what we call Section 5.1, so they receive their policing from OPP through default. I believe, and again, this is coming from memory, about maybe 120 receive it via Section 10 arrangements, but again, I could be wrong on that one.
Thank you. Member Cruz, do you have a question?
Dave, are the regulations approved at the same time as the CSPA?
No. CSPA was approved in 2019, or received royal assent. The regulations are currently ongoing. So some have been drafted and have already gone into the Ontario registry for comment. Some actually will put up, I think, on November 18th, but as they get drafted, they're being kind of consulted on.
Okay. And with the regulations, are they fluid generally, or?
Well, yeah, they can change. I mean, they have to go through a legislative process to change, but yes, they can, and they do. So, yeah.
Any other questions of Mr. Tilley? Seeing none, if I could have a motion of the presentation of the information being accepted. Member Van Houten, and seconded by Member Cruz. All in favor? Perfect. All right. Thank you, Mr. Tilley, for your presentation. Thank you. Okay, so we will go back then to the financial report. Are we ready for that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the board. My colleagues in the finance department are just comment at their meeting. So if they have a chance, they're going to show up and give a little update. Okay. Otherwise, I'll make sure I come to the next board meeting. Just at a very high level. I'm certainly not an accountant, so I hope there's no questions. But the Police Services Board budget will be coming before Council on January 18th or 19th, depending on the flow of business, and that's what's going to be decided. So that's our meeting timeline for that discussion. So there'll be time for comment. I'll keep you, of course, aware of what's going on.
Okay. So what we'll do is, being that we have two deputations, we'll continue on then. Okay? Everyone okay with that?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. So we'll start out with the first deputation on the agenda, which is 6.1, Mr. Dan Nagy. He's going to speak to us today in regards to the federal firearm consultation program and the cost of Norfolk taxpayers. So Mr. Nagy, if you could take the floor, please. Yeah, and welcome. Thank you. Now, Mr. Nagy, just so that you're aware, you don't have to press any buttons for Mike. We are being recorded, so whenever you're ready, my friend. And welcome.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the board for giving me the opportunity to address you. I'm not the best speaker in crowd, so bear with me. This firearm confiscation that the Liberal government's proceeding with is actually quite taxing our communities. They supply, to the best of my knowledge, are not supplying any funds or personnel to do this. By my calculations, which is just rough calculations, of course, I figured in Norfolk County, it's going to cost roughly somewhere from $1 million to $3 million, maybe even more. That's taking into consideration the time of constables, which I would suspect would be set out in pairs, the time to collect, the time to record, administration, destruction, overtime, vehicles, etc. That's a lot of money, and I don't know if this board is prepared to. I would hope that this board is prepared not to spend that kind of money at the Norfolk taxpayers' expense. The whole process is actually like a double-edged sword. The second portion is the confiscation of registered firearms once a person is passed on. I know particularly of two cases, not here in Norfolk to the best of my knowledge, where the very next day after the gun owner had passed away, the police wound up with a warrant at the front door and seized this private property. Now, under the Firearms Act, Section 112, paragraph 2, subsection 1 clearly states that the executor of the will becomes the possessor of that property. Now, the government is not allowing any more transfers, so the person cannot actually take possession, but there are other avenues within the law, such as having them deactivated, like welded up and kept as keepsakes, what have you, is perfectly legal. So there really is there's no legal avenue for these firearms to be actually collected. The person, if they live in that home and they are the executor, they should refuse to have them taken away. So that's pretty much the gist of it. I'm trying not to take up a lot of your time. I know you have a lot of business to do, but just to reiterate, at the cost of Norfolk County taxpayers, this is a huge amount of money. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nagy. I'll open the floor now to questions. Are there any questions of the board members to Mr. Nagy? Councilor?
Councilor Manadrishi, through you, Mr. Chair. Just out of curiosity, on confiscation, and maybe it's directed to you or to the OPP, how do you know that a person has a firearm that's under the Act for confiscation, or is this a turn-in program? I just don't know.
Would you like me to answer? All restricted firearms that initially it started out, and by order of council, they keep growing this list. And it's actually got down to a lot of our hunting guns now too. But initially registered, for instance, a revolver or a pistol that we would use for target shooting at our local club, that's registered to the address and to an individual. So whenever I would want to go and target shoot at my licensed club, I have what they call an authorization to transport. And that's based on the registration certificate that's tied to the firearm, which is tied to me. So every legal, I can't stress that enough, every legal firearm in the restricted category is on a list. You could punch up my name through CPIC and it'll tell you every single firearm that I own that's registered. And only certain ones had to be at that point, which would be your pistols, your revolvers, some carbines. Usually most of the rifles and shotguns that we use for sport shooting and hunting would not be on that list. Half of this came about because of a shooting in Texas. Something happened in Texas that made us change our laws. So
We've had a few more than that. But at the end of the day, are those handguns not grandfathered if they've been year-round?
No, absolutely not.
So those all handguns must be turned in? Is that the?
Well, there's an exhaustive list, right?
Yes.
Sorry, there is an exhaustive list that, it's still in the House of Commons, the
Right, yeah.
legislation has not been passed.
Exactly.
No.
So to talk about this, that, like, I can't speak to it
Oh,
specifically,
yeah.
all I can say is, like, Public Safety Canada is in control of some of the aspects of this, whether it's gonna be a time period for amnesty where people can return them if it's passed, depending on what the list is. Again, we're talking what ifs, I can't speak to specifics. There'll be a period of time where gun owners will have to turn their firearms in, and whatever that time period is, and after that time period, it will be then any of those firearms that are on that list that owners still have in their residence will be against the Criminal Code of Canada, and we'll have to investigate that. That will then be incumbent upon the police. But again, we'll only know the ones that are.
So we don't know, so this is all premature.
It is.
Okay, thank you then. That answers my question actually. Thank you very much.
Good. Any other questions? Mr. Nagy, have you approached our member of provincial parliament and our member of parliament in regards to this issue or these issues that you've brought to the police service board?
They're well aware of it. It's with all due respect to Inspector Case, the way that they've done through order in council, by revoking certificates, or as they say, nullifying certificates, and by not issuing transfers, basically what they have done is that they've tried to make it so that nobody can have that gun. You'll never be able to grandfather it as which is a good term which we used to have. They've made it so that that's impossible. The one thing they did forget, though, like I said, was that it's the rights of the executor. That firearm becomes their possession, even though you can't transfer it into their name, but there still are lawful acts they could do, such as deactivation, in order to keep it as a keepsake by a licensed gunsmith in the province of Ontario here. I hope I answered your question.
Yes.
Okay.
And if I may, Mr. Nagy, I mean, really, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's up to the federal government.
Exactly, yeah. I dumbfounded thinking that somebody can pass a law that's going to impact the amount of money that we're going to spend on that and say, here, you need to do this, find the funds. Well, I think people are taxed enough in this country. And as a taxpayer of Norfolk, I think I pay my fair share, and I don't really want to pay any more, not for something like this. This does nothing to help our community. So it comes down to a dollar and cents thing, and it's really easy to pass laws when you make somebody else pay for them.
Are there any other questions of board members of Mr. Nagy?
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Nagy.
Thank you for your time.
Seeing none, if I can ask that we have a motion to receive this information for the deputation. Motion by Vice Chair Huffman. And we need a seconder by Member Van Houten. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Nagy, for your time.
There's some ego on there.
Oh, thanks once again. Thank you. Okay, so back to the agenda, 6.2. We have Mrs. Jean Montgomery, who is the chair of the Police Service Board Committee. And,
Community policing.
Community Policing Committee. So, welcome.
Surprise.
Welcome, Mrs. Montgomery, and good morning.
Good morning. Thank you to the Police Service Board Chair, the members, and the OPP and staff. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I won't be too long either, but I do come to you on behalf of the Norfolk County Community Policing Committee. I've been in contact with our members and had feedback from them, and hence this presentation. Our concern is the status of our committee. When we consider the Police Services Board mandate, it is working with partners, and we feel that the community policing members are partners and we won't go through all what's written, but in the strategic plan, it states its priority and objective is working with the partners. And the mission so far, I know things are changing, and I will say I embrace change. If we need to do something different, let's do it. But let's not do it without consultation or without looking at a vision to the future and meeting the needs of our community. So the mission of the community policing is to facilitate and maintain partnerships between the OPP, the Police Services Board, community groups and businesses, citizens of Norfolk County, working together to prioritize, share, and the safety of our community, to advise the Police Services Board matters of community policing and make recommendations to Norfolk County through this board. So it's a pretty hefty job. I would just like to say, I know there's been lots of changes, and just a little bit of background. When we used to have a community policing in every zone, in every ward, and that worked really well. I was on that for many years. We did things like lock it or lose it. We had safety vests for offshore workers. We provided for the kids bike rodeos, just in the community, in our own community. We did not have support of any clerk or any staff from the county, and they worked very well, and a lot of good things came out of those committees. However, I know some of the committees were not very active, others were very active. And then it was decided that we would have one committee with members from each board, from each ward. And we just got started, and there was just a lot of, we were in flux. It was during COVID, and I applaud Aaron. He's our clerk that stayed with us the longest. We had many different clerks. We weren't that bad of a committee. But members were eager to do something. And what we see our role as is being the eyes and ears in the community. The things that happen, not everyone knows. We are active in our community, and we like to gain information. We had presentations from the police and from different organizations, and we need that information so that we, just as people in the community, can spread that information and, you know, garner some goodwill that things are happening and be advised of what is important in our community. So we see that as a real need. These members that have been consistent, they have contributed to the committee. They want to contribute to Norfolk County, and I would hope that there would be a way that we can continue that. It might look a lot different than it does now, but I would hope that we could consider whatever the structure would be, that we would have just ordinary citizens in the community that could come together and contribute by learning, and also by contributing their what they hear and see in the community to the Police Services Board, and then further on to Norfolk County. So we just think that I don't know what the recommendation would be, but it would be great to have some consultation and see what we can do. I know everything is in flux now with new council and things moving forward after COVID, but I'm really hoping that our group can continue in some manner, whatever that might be, and that we can contribute to the safety and well-being of Norfolk County. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Montgomery. If I could just have you stay there, there might be some questions of the board. Are there any questions of the board to Mrs. Montgomery? Councilor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Jean, welcome. I'm not familiar with the committee itself, and does it comprise of then a representative from every board still?
Through you, the board, through you from the chair, yes, initially, yes.
Initially, yes. What does that mean? Is it yes or no?
It is yes.
Oh, yes.
We had a problem of people had to apply and were confirmed by Norfolk County Council, and somehow some of that paperwork is lost. So we generally have someone from every ward, as long as.
So there's 7 members on the committee.
Yes.
We gotta get 12.
We had a youth member.
Oh, okay, that's good.
We had someone that was appointed before my time.
So when was your last meeting, if I can ask?
Oh, that was,
I believe it was in June of this past year.
I think so.
Yes,
Okay.
we have the minutes on the file.
And so your ask is that you'd like to see the committee comprised of the same representation in a sense, whether
through the chair to you. We want to see how this will work. I think every ward needs to be represented.
Oh, absolutely.
And the format doesn't have to be the way it is now.
Okay.
There has to be some type of forum and some structure
Sure.
enable that.
Okay.
Thank
That's your ask. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Montgomery. Councilor. Vice Chair Hoffman?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Jean. Now, there was a whole kind of overhaul of committees and things like that. So the community policing, just the way things were, it was decided that it would be ended. My understanding is that you're coming to council to do a deputation?
Yes.
Okay, so that will be a great place to start in terms of looking at some alternatives. I do agree, community policing is very important. The way it was working, it was probably not the format that was best for your committee. So I'm looking forward to your deputation to council, and that this can be revisited and we can look at reestablishing some form of the committee.
Through the chair to you, Kim, exactly. We're not saying that if it's not productive, if we aren't doing something, although I feel we have, Aaron may think differently, but we've got lots of information and people feel that they're contributing to, so thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Member Van.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to Jean. You know, I thank you for all the work that you've always done. Now, I know the difficulties, because you know, when I come on the kids board, right in the pandemic really made it tough for any new members, any new boards.
No, for sure.
It's just made it difficult when the flow don't happen. So I remember, Mr. Chairman, you and I talking before, we said it's too bad, just there's some great people that they want to do some help. And going way back in history, I don't know that history so well, but I think as you outlined, Jean, there was some great stuff that was done. And actually, from being a board member and having that eyes and ears, it can only benefit that partnering and, you know, so from a board member, for a board member's perspective, you know, I appreciate that type of backup for, you know, for us, you know, as well, right? And, you know, there's only benefit that I can see to it. I'm just gonna put my word out there now. There might be different options of how to do it a bit better. I think that's what you're kind of wanting to brainstorm out somewhere along the line. You know, if Because isn't it current one, didn't we approve of 12 members when we did it? When I first come here, wasn't it 12 of the
Yeah.
total board members? Yeah.
It was quite a few.
So when we have people that want to help, and that can be beneficial to us. I like the idea, so I'm wishing you well, and I'm saying thanks for all the good stuff you guys have done, because you listed some of the things over back in the history, some really good stuff that comes out of that, right? And then we have community watch meetings and all that, I don't know, okay, I'm wishing you the best.
Thank you, Mr. Renner. Mrs. Montgomery, just to kind of enlighten our board members, everybody could turn to page 49 of the agenda. On page 49 of 64, there are numerous pages here. So I want everybody to understand that this was put together during my time in 2019. Now, when this was put together, what we were told by council, the Police Services Board at that time, was what we had authority to delegate, okay? Or council had authority to delegate to Norfolk County Police Services Board to appoint members to Norfolk County Community Policing Committee. And I remember being on that committee. There was about 15 applications, and we agreed to 12, and they all went through police checks, and everything was fine. The only problem that I had at that time, and I still have, look at the terms of reference. If everybody looks at all these terms of reference, there's they're great footings, and it's a great foundation, but it's just too much. And when volunteers meet together, and I've been, since the age of 16, involved with community policing, with the VIP programs, and the old Halton Norfolk Regional Police, and the OPP back in '99 until about 2005. It was, we sit around a table, there was 5 or 6 of us, either from Simcoe or from Waterford or from Port Dover, and we had coffee, we had a secretary, we talked, and things got done. We had an officer, at that time it was, I believe it was Staff Sergeant Rigby that was part of the community policing. And my goodness, it was simple issues that were resolved within a month. And it didn't even go to the Police Services Board. It was done amongst the OPP and the community. And so programs such as Crime Stoppers and programs such as Lock It or Lose It, they flourished. And the Police Services Board weren't even aware of what was happening because the OPP took our group under their wing. And it wasn't political, it was just, okay, here we have issues, okay, and it was like, okay, Mike, his name was Mr. Sergeant Rigby was Mike. So he said, Mike, we had an issue in downtown Simcoe, but we also have a problem with the park, not enough lighting. And he says, well, let's make a phone call to Public Works. And boom, 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 and next thing you know, the lighting was put in and no issue, it didn't come to council. Things were done, very simple. So what we've done, Mrs. Montgomery, is we've complicated this. And to the point where this, you would think, is like a Police Services Board. When you're meeting, this is like, look at all the pages. And I bring this to the attention. It's very complicated. And so I would suggest, Mrs. Montgomery, going forward, and I support the group fully, is we keep everything simple. And honestly, getting council involved is great because there would be need for funds, but I think that's where the Police Services Board can come in, even though we're limited with funds ourselves. And I mean, I think truly it's communication. Really wanting to know what's happening from the Police Services Board perspective in our community, and I think the police can really come in and just make things happen, and we don't really need all of this. That's my, and I'm being very sincere. I'm, again, age of 16 and I'm 53 now. The last 36 years, what I found is simplicity, not complacency, not complication, simplicity. And here I am, 53 years, and basically saying if it was done that way and it worked, we should go back to the drawing board and maybe make it work. So.
To you, Chair, and Aaron can attest to this, through our meetings, that was my first agenda item when becoming chair, is to look through the terms of reference for the committee. And we started to go through that, and we struck a subcommittee to review the terms of reference and to eliminate or revise. And we spent a bit of time on that, and we did a lot of work, and we brought it to our meeting, and then it was going to be tabled because the county was going to be revising all their terms of reference. So we certainly echo your concerns. People who are on the community policing board, they want to be there to contribute, and they're not, even Rita Culver, who was the chair of the Grand Erie School Board, sits on our committee, and she said, I don't like it being so formal, we just need to talk.
It's gonna be fun too.
Yeah, for sure. And as you said, through the COVID, we had never met each other. So we had all these people online who've never met each other, and that was part of our issue too. So, but anyways, thank you.
Chief Case had her hand up, so Chief Case, would you like to?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thank you for coming forward. It's nice to see you again. And you know that I support, and just so to let everybody know that I do support that committee going forward, and the OPP will be part of that.
Through the chair, thank you very much. Appreciate that. We're all working together, aren't we? Yeah. So,
Thank you for your patience and your time, and we wish you lots of luck tomorrow at council. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Sorry, no other questions? Mrs. Montgomery, may I have a motion to receive the deputation for information? Councilor
Vanden Rishi.
Vander Rishi.
Vanden Rishi.
You thought my name was that.
Vanden Rishi. There's V-A-N-D-E-N-D-R. So it's just Vanden Rishi. Or Linda's fine too.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Do we have a seconder? Okay, Vice Chair Hubbard. Okay,
all those in favor?
all in favor? Perfect. That has been carried. So we'll move on to the agenda, consent agenda, 7.1, 7.2. Does any board member wish to pull an item for further discussion? Member Cruz?
I'd like to pull 7.2, please.
Okay, that's page 21. The floor is yours.
Through you, Chair, I noticed in reading the October 1922 report, Inspector Kays, that 5 new OPP recruits were hired.
Yes.
As an information item to the board, through you, Chair, would you be able to take us through the process of hiring a new recruit to when the recruit is competent and out on their own?
Oh, okay.
I think like, so hiring, internal training, OPC, coach officer, and then like how long does that take and when is the process, either one?
Thank you, through you, Chair, and Staff Sergeant Morgan might be able to help. It's been a long time since I've been through police college. 1993 was what I went through, so it's definitely changed since then, the whole recruitment process. I can't, do you know how many weeks in total they are in training? Because it's certainly changed since
Yeah, it's changed since I've been through, so it's, through Mr. Chair, it's 3 months at OPC. And an additional 8 weeks at what we call Provincial Police Academy, or really specific to OPP.
That's after Ontario Police College?
Correct.
Okay.
You said 8 weeks?
And then they're, after they get back from the OPP college, they're assigned a coach officer?
Yeah.
that's correct, so.
And how long are they with the coach officers?
Per year.
For a year?
Yeah.
And then if they're competent, then they're out on their own doing calls for service in our community?
Yeah, it's,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so they're out on their own during day shift, about 3 months in, 2 to 3 months in. We're starting day shifts. Then a couple months later, we'll have them out on their own on night shifts with the coach very close by to assist if needed, and certainly listening to everyone on the radio as well.
Okay. So the hiring of 5 new recruits, it isn't that, oh, you just hired 5 new recruits and put them up. We're talking a year
A year.
or more?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, okay,
Along with many evaluations,
right.
throughout that year as well.
Good.
Every month, and which comes through the staffs, then through me for approval. So, and then goes up to region. And they do also, so West Region has implemented some training specifically for the recruits after they've been on the road for a period of time, so they go back to region to get some up-to-date, so they have some context, because of course when you're in police college, you haven't had the experience of being on the road, so they allow them to go on the road for a bit, and they go back to region to do some supplemental training on some specific traffic, crime, and other aspects of policing, so yeah, it's continual training.
Yeah,
Through those months,
yeah,
yeah, it's ongoing.
good, thank you.
Also, we've had 3 experienced police officers recently come to our office while we're on this topic. 2 from Hamilton Police and 1 from Brantford. So that is very valuable to the detachment because they come with years of experience between 17. Well, one was pretty 5 or 7 or something. And the other 2 were 17 and 20 years of policing experience.
Great.
That's a great addition to the community. And again, they're in a 10-month probationary process as well.
Thank you.
Are you finished?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. What's the full complement of the officers in Canada? That's not a
That
number.
is a good question.
I wouldn't want to guess, we can get back to it.
Oh, I appreciate that. And just further to that is the distribution, how they distribute into the like how many rural-based or urban-based, or is that? I don't understand how that works, so if I can get a bit of information on that, that would be great.
Okay. Yeah, they are.
I see our constable are policemen all the time.
Oh, okay, yes, they are distributed among zones. I can give you, we'll get more specifics as to what the zones encompass. And it's based on population, of course, as to how many officers are in that specific zone. Right, and sometimes our shifts are, they do vary, depending on time off, training, sick days, so.
Just out of curiosity question.
Yeah, for sure.
That will be valuable to the board as we go on, I think, that information, like the zones and the complement of officers.
Yeah, is that something that you'd like to see in the monthly report?
Yes.
Yes,
It's important to me.
yeah,
That's fine, yeah.
And knowing that they're not specific to that zone, if another officer needs help or calls
Well,
for certain,
right,
it's
absolutely.
very transferable to.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's an extremely important point to the community to understand that each area is being serviced. And that's the key to them. They want to know what is their place around.
And as we get questions just throughout our daily lives about, because we're on the board about certain procedures and how many officers and this and that, are there criminal investigators here, that it's helpful for us to know that, so we can just throw it out there.
Be very transparent.
Yeah, for sure, and I can include our street crimes complement and our crime complement, no problem.
Great,
yeah, that would be very beneficial.
And just to add, the word that I've heard in the past several years is borderless policing. So Oxford, Brant, Alderman, everybody works in conjunction with Norfolk.
So yes, Chair, we're a syndicate, so the region is now separated in syndicates, they call them, with a superintendent in charge of a specific syndicate. So ours is Alderman, Brant, Oxford, and Norfolk together. And we talk about borderless because if there's officers that are off, we will assist other detachments depending on the complement. We do talk about this prior to shift. Staff sergeants, there's 2 in Oxford, 2 in Norfolk, and 1 in Brant. And Haldeman, they try to share their time off, so that there's always somebody for the syndicate. Again, with the sergeants, the same thing. So if Haldeman is down a sergeant that day, they usually reach out to one of the syndicate partners to ensure that they give a lifeline and vice versa. If we're down, we have 2 sergeants per shift, and so does Oxford, where the other detachments have 1. But if we're down 2 sergeants for some reason, that doesn't happen often for us, but we will reach out to the other detachments to ensure that we have those pieces covered.
So the new word now is syndicate.
It is syndicate.
Sounds very
I
organized private to me.
Yeah, it seems a little,
Because when we're talking to other members, Grant County, that we're all on the same page with the language. Because when I first heard borderless policing, I'm thinking, okay, we have our own force. What's happening here? But it makes a lot of sense. An officer could be in need and is 10 minutes away in Oxford versus the detachment, which is 20 minutes away.
Absolutely. So at the communication center in London, they're able to see where all the cars are. All our cars are GPS, right? So if there's a call for service, say in Delhi, and an Oxford unit is closer, and it's a priority 1, which is a serious call, we would definitely send the closest officer to the call for those incidents, which is beneficial.
I've known that crime and criminals don't stay within the.
They overlap.
Exactly.
Well, and which is a very good point. So the inspectors at all those detachments, we do meet regularly. So the syndicate does meet for those specifics with also the crime manager and traffic manager out of the West Region. So we do have those meetings on a quarterly basis as well. Also, just to so everybody here knows, is that I work closely with both the Brantford City Chief of Police on the road and the Six Nations Chief of Police. So we just recently developed, I would say, the same kind of consultation piece with the Chief of Six Nations, Chief of Brantford City, and the syndicate inspectors to meet regularly. We're starting to do some joint initiatives. I'm not sure if you've seen, we recently did some traffic. Our festive ride together jointly with Six Nations partner out on Friday night, myself, Staff Sergeant Fox, Six Nations partner, and we did a roving festive ride with our Six Nations partner. We've done it with Brantford City, and we're going to continue to do that with all of our initiatives going forward.
Right.
For that very reason that criminals and don't know borders.
Right.
We need to develop those partnerships.
Right, and with the results coming from bypass and major case management and everything coming in, it's all fluid.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. That's reassuring to hear. And it's interesting that you mentioned the RIDE program. There was talk on Saturday at the coffee shop that Norfolk OPP and the Six Nations were out. And I guess Ed Sanchuk was interviewing, I believe, Staff Sergeant Fox.
Yes.
And that evening, I understood that you were there with the other officers, and I'm thinking, excellent. I mean, it's setting a tone and working with our neighbors, and I think that works to all our favors. And thank you for asking the question and opening that dialogue, because the general public has no idea. They have no idea what's happening. They just think of all of their own little ward, and as Norfolk County, we're one, for sure. So thank you very much.
Part of the syndicate.
Yes, Sure. Are there any other questions in regards to these reports? If not, I do have 2 points that I want to make, and I want to ask a question. So I'm going to ask everybody here, please and thank you, to turn to page 15. Page 15 of 64, midpoint is Community Street Crime Unit. Now, I've heard on the radio and I've read in the paper in the last week and the last several months that, there's warrants, there's arrests. And so what I'm looking here is, it says Community Street Crime Unit. During July and August, the Community Street Crime Unit was involved in 167 investigations, which included 5 warrants. So Chief, if you can kind of just give me a clear understanding, and I know this was in July and August, and then I'll reference on page 27, which I believe is the month of October. And I know in the past, we've had people come to the Police Service Board and talk about cannabis, and that's one issue, but this is more than just cannabis. We're talking, my goodness, some serious drugs on our streets. So could you allude and elaborate on this?
Yes, Chair, thank you for bringing that to the attention. So if you do notice, this unit, our Community Street Crime Unit, is comprised of a detective sergeant who oversees, and it's in joint with Haldeman. So it's a Norfolk Haldeman street crime unit. I believe there are five constables, detective constables in Norfolk, and now this is Haldeman, so I think there's 4 in Haldeman, so a total of 9 on the team. Speaking about the syndicate, and right, there's a street crime unit and other detachments as well, and you can see the work that they do for 9 people is quite impressive. They work very hard, and they're getting a lot of charges. But the importance is to know that this is an issue in our community, not to take away from cannabis whatsoever and the issues involved in that. We are on that as well, but it is important to know that sometimes we don't talk about this as much because it's a vulnerable group of people that are being affected in our communities. People that don't have voices, people that maybe we don't know about or are part of a community that maybe isn't as supportive. And I think it's important to know that this is affecting our communities, and deaths related in fentanyl and opioid deaths are a serious investigation for us. They are investigated by the Criminal Investigations Branch of the OPP, they are investigated as homicides. So it is a serious issue for our community, stretching from, Brantford, 6 stations into Simcoe. So we are on it, and you can see that our unit is working very diligently and getting a lot of results. They are on a 5-year term. So when they get hired as a detective constable, they come into a unit on we want to call it a temporary kind of thing. It's for 5 years that they're rotated in on contracts for.
No, that's interesting. And finally, on page 27, what caught my eye was, and I'm looking at it, during October, 123 investigations which included 9 warrants. It's not easy to get a warrant. So I'm thinking, not only is this serious stuff, but then 110 criminal code charges were laid. So these officers don't sleep. I mean.
Well, I hope they do.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Because I mean.
Yeah, they work very hard.
The numbers
they
are
work very hard. They take their job very seriously. They execute a lot of warrants, which do take time, months of legwork to get search warrants into residences are not easy. And we support them as much as we can.
Okay. Well, and I look at the number of 123 investigations, 30 days in the month of, 31 days in the month of October. So we're looking at about 4 investigations per day, roughly, give or take.
Right.
Which to me, that's fairly high. And I mean, the seizures they're excellent. So I mean, ultimately, it's working in our favor.
Absolutely.
And so the street crime unit is making a very big difference. So Chief, if you can, on behalf of the Norfolk Police Services Board, thank them for the work that they're doing and let them know that their work is acknowledged by us speaking of it, not just looking at numbers. And I also have to admit, by having these detailed reports gives me a clear indication of what's happening, more in depth. I mean, we all see numbers each and every day, and I'm not talking banking numbers, I'm talking just number stats. This gives us a clear understanding that that our taxpayers' dollars are being used wisely, and I want the general public to understand that things are looking up and looking much better in Norfolk County. And I leave that open to our members. Any comments?
Warm feelings with respect to community safety as well when I'm reading that, and they're doing a great job.
Just like you can add a little bit of that, and it's in the report, and you have to commend Chief Case and the entire team when it comes to media releases. And I acting as a preventative, we're in a good designation there, being the highest producer as far as, that work. So there must be great relationships to make that happen, of course, and it acts as a preventative, so hats off to you, that's good stuff.
Mr. Chair, for you, not to limit this discussion, but there is some refreshment in the room available just for the meeting. If I'm wanting a 5-minute break, you're welcome to enjoy that if you'd like to.
I'll ask maybe 2 other questions of our chief, and if we wish, we could take a 5-minute break, if that's up to the board.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Vice Chair Huffman, you're good with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Councilor?
Yep.
Okay. Page 39, public education campaigns. Mr. Sanchuk, Norfolk County Fair. I just wanted to highlight this because I had some dealings with Mr. Sanchuk at the Norfolk County Fair, and I was impressed by the booth that the OPP had put together, and interaction was just unbelievable. You would think that he was running for mayor. He interacts with every walk of life, and this was during, of course, an election. But Ed, Constable Sanchuk is definitely an excellent resource and an asset to our community. And I just wanted Chief and Staff Sergeant to relay a thank you on behalf of the Norfolk County Police Services Board on his tremendous work. I mean, I've read what you had put here, and it's true. And I saw with my own eyes that the interaction is just unbelievable. And it is paramount that this continue, and it has. And he is seen pretty well everywhere in Norfolk and even outside of Norfolk. And I also read from our police commissioner in Aurelia that we have one of the top media outputs.
Yeah, well, I don't know that, I'm not sure, Jeff, if you know, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, just unbelievable. So I'm very thankful, and I want the community to understand that it's just not the Ed Sanchuk, it's the whole staff, but he, of course, being the face of the OPP and connecting, it's paramount. And I can't say enough that we support this and we continue to guide and help. So if resources are available, any funding is required for anything with reference to the Norfolk County Fair, because I know in the past our Police Services Board has funded a display or two, but I'm more than happy to go on board, and I believe the board members would be just to support anything else that's required. And it's not only the Norfolk County Fair. I mean, we're talking the Langton Fair, we're talking parades in Waterford, and so on and so forth. So this encompasses all the wards in Norfolk County. So with that, Chief, there was one other question that I had, and that had to do with the encampments. There was a page here that referred to clearing of 3 or 4 encampments in the month of November. Just bear with me 1 second. It caught my eye because the encampments were, I believe there was 3 encampments. Oh, here we are. On page 16.
16?
Yeah, page 16 of 64 of the agenda. Midpoint, it says 3 homeless encampments dismantled, Lynn Valley Trail ×2, Brooks Conservation Area, which is Long Point Conservation. I mean, this is excellent. And it has to do with the community mobilization officer.
Yeah, but is it? If I may? Yeah. If I could interject in
Sure.
Mr. Chair, through you. It indicates to me we have an issue, and that is for the homeless. And I think we're going to have to be taking a look as council, something to try to mitigate that circumstance, because it's a sad thing if you're living in a tent. So breaking it up is fine, understandable, but what happens after you break it up? Do you relocate these people, or do you try to find the right outreach program that assists them? Or is there, what happens after that? Like, if I may ask.
Oh, no, that's a very good question.
This is a great question. I don't have a definitive answer for you. I can tell you that our community mobilization officer, which is Constable Everly, he works extremely diligently in this community with many, many different community partners. It might be advantageous to have him come and speak to the Police Services Board, because I will not do it justice as the work he does. It is incredible. We have lots of resources that we reach out to. He often tries to place them. Of course, it's a larger issue than just Norfolk, right, to get into that. But placing people is not easy to say, but we certainly work hard along with our MSERT workers, so our crisis workers that work every day. So we have one working around the clock, well, not around the clock, but during the day, 7 days a week with one of our members to help facilitate some of these
I appreciate
resources.
Like I say, it's a good thing what you're doing. I can understand the policing end of it, but also we have to have the humanity end of it, that we have to find solutions to these issues.
Absolutely, and we're on the same page. Oftentimes, it's a call for service for us that people in the community are complaining about these encampments, so we have to enforce it. But we do have a compassion, the fact that they are homeless, and we do attempt to try to find them.
Oh, I appreciate that. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that, Councillor Linda and Vice Chair Huffman and Chief, on page 29, and I mean, what I understand with this mobile crisis rapid response team is that, you know, a lot of calls are either diverted from the hospital, but at least it's being adhered to. We're just not saying, okay, it will be dealt with. At least the officer and his team are making attempts, and I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, this is a problem we have throughout the whole province and the country itself. But I think from a police perspective and the Police Services Board, it's interesting to see that, yes, the mobile crisis, the community mobilization officer, I mean, there's things that are happening, and the police are doing the best they can, from what I understand, and from what we can do. But I mean, Councillor and Vice Chair, I mean, ultimately, Council is probably well aware of what's happening, but this information is important and it's open to the public. So if you can send this off to Council and make them aware, by all means, for sure.
Yeah,
okay, thank you. Any other questions? If not, we'll take a 5-minute break, if that's okay.
The encampment issue is in my view, is multifaceted. It actually can be quite dangerous too for the officers, and then the community approaching. The last RCMP officer that was killed a couple of weeks ago was as a result of trying to remove that. So it's a multifaceted situation there that's quite dangerous. It's got so many issues around it.
A lot of moving parts.
Yes, yes.
Sure. Okay, so if we can, what I'll do is I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. Okay, to receive this as information for discussion. Okay, so Member Cruz and seconded by Vice Chair Huffman. All in favor? Okay, it's carried. Thank you very much. We'll take that 5-minute break.
So we done with consent items?
Yeah.
Okay.
So everyone will come back. We'll focus on the financials. Okay. Sorry, I don't know if there's another microphone.
Oh,
We're live, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. It's 10:37. We're back on. Today's December the 12th, and we will go back to the agenda. I'll ask everyone to turn back to 5.2, the Financial Services Staff Report. So I understand we have a representative from Norfolk County. The floor is yours, and I understand your name is Mike?
Yes.
Okay, so Mike, if you would take. And just so that everybody's aware, he's going to present the Financial Services Report for 2023 for the Norfolk Police Services Board.
I'm just restarting.
Okay.
Also,
I'll start.
Mike's last name?
It's Sickle.
Dan Sickle?
Morning, everyone. Through the chair, so I am filling in very last minute for Ryan, who is your typical go-to for anything finance related. So Aaron will bring up the budget in a second, but I'll just start. So the main budget driver is the change in Norfolk County share of contracted OPP costs, which is provided by the province, and we receive a bit of a breakdown for that. I won't go through all the details, but should the board require it, then we can provide that at a later meeting. So the 2022 budget was not adjusted because at the time it was unclear if the decrease in allocation was a one-time change. So by not adjusting it, we had a decrease this year, and from communications that we've had with the province, that this would be an ongoing reduction for Norfolk County. So, yes, so through those communications, we are fairly confident that this will be ongoing and will not require an increase going into 2024. The other two drivers are a decrease in revenues for the prisoner transportation program. Apologies if I messed up that term. And an increase in charges from the clerk's department, which is strictly based on time spent working on police force board activities. So the overall net levy requirement for 2023 is $12,299,400, which is an overall decrease of $665,500 or 5.1%.
Excuse me, Mr. Van Sickle?
Yes.
Can we get something on the screen as these numbers?
Yes, sorry, once Aaron's able to.
You have it on yours?
I keep losing internet connection.
Yeah.
I try to. Yeah. I can join and try to share it.
So the difference from last year to this year is approximately how much?
It's a decrease of $665,500.
From a previous 13 million, correct?
13 million is the requirement for 2023. So the prior year was sorry, just 1 second. So 12.3 is the requirement for this year, 2023. Last year it was 12,964,900.
Could you just repeat the drivers for the decrease? Like, what were the reasons why we're decreasing?
It's mainly the contract, so that's.
So the contracts that you said for the driving of, prisoner driving.
That actually wasn't it. It was the overall, so we get from the province the allocation to, yeah.
Right, okay.
So you're saying that we receive more money from the province of Ontario?
We receive less of a cost from the province, less of a charge.
Yeah, I need to see, like.
Sorry, I can bring it up, yeah.
I'm confused.
I don't know how we can have a lesser allocation.
From what my my understanding is with reference to police services, we have a very limited budget ourselves.
Yeah, that's right.
So what I'm taking from here is, we're talking about the full budget with regards to Norfolk OPP. So that hasn't been brought to my attention, and Vice Chair Hoffman, you were part of this meeting.
I thought it was the police services board budget we were discussing.
That's correct. That was my understanding, and only that. Just as a board.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's
I
weird.
think it's you, right?
So that's my email, in case you can reach me.
Oh, weird. Sorry.
Forgive me.
You,
I shouldn't.
that's weird. I've never seen that before.
No.
So, Mr. Vincent, if I may select you, so Vice Chair Hoffman and I, on December the 2nd, had a Zoom meeting with the county clerk. So I'm looking at my notes, and correct me if I'm wrong, Vice Chair Hoffman, but it was my understanding that the money that was allocated to us were for speed signs, money allocated to the administrator to administrate copies and prepare for meetings. And my understanding was, it was under my clear understanding that there was $7,000 spent with community speed watch signs, but that, of course, was not correct because they went back to 2020, 2021. So I guess we're always 1 year behind, so to speak. So that was where I was coming from, and then I understood that we're going to have a budget of $8,000 as a police services board.
For just the speed watch signs or for
The board.
board?
No, for the actual board.
Yeah.
Just the board ourselves.
Sorry, my apologies. So,
Those
yeah,
were the notes.
you are correct. There is 8,000 in the budget for the police services.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, if we're looking at the whole entire budget, I mean, you can inform us of this, but it's a 4-year contract, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we get a revised allocation every year, from my understanding, so that
Okay.
it's updated every year.
Correct. So when is this renewal going to happen? Are we looking at 2024?
That I would have to bring back to the board. I'm not sure.
Because from my perspective, and Vice Chair Huffman, correct me if I'm wrong, so we were just looking at, we as a board, and these monies, and looking at 2023, and that was pretty well it. We weren't looking at the 13 million or the 12 million.
No, we didn't. We haven't had a chance to be presented with any of those
Exactly.
figures.
So this to me is new. I've seen these numbers before. I'm pretty content with the numbers. But I'm just trying to understand if there's a savings or if there isn't a savings after the 4-year projection or after the contract is over, and continue on with possibly another 4 years or 5 years, depending on whatever, then that information will come to council and then to the board.
Right, yes, so, my apologies, I thought that this was for the entire budget, but
No
not
problem.
just for police services board. You're right, there's the $8,000 in there. There's the, contracted amounts for salaries and benefits and mileage.
Yes.
And then I believe the number that affects the police services board would then be the increased clerk's charges, which hopefully we can bring up on screen to show you, but that would be the only change
So that includes more hours?
That includes, so they were charging very little time. It was like $200, very minimal for police service board, and just because of a new revised Aaron.
Thank you. Just to continue to the board. Just building on this conversation, just because I know we have another financial analyst who's our subject matter expert on food services budget. Having a part of that conversation, it's not as if the board will do more hours of support or more time to staff, rather it's about how we're just charging that. So it's more just we're moving around dollars and cents, not enhancing staff support.
Right,
That would
so
remain the same.
just actually making that the interdepartmental charges
Yeah.
were actually accurate.
Yeah, so for instance, clerk's time is charged to our corporate budget for the time I spent with you. Going forward, we're gonna reallocate it, sounds like, two different, basically it's a coding thing to me.
Well, if I can bring something up that as the chair of the police service board, we're very limited with what we have. And I've expressed that to our members. So if we're talking about this now, I think it's a golden opportunity to have that increase. Vice Chair Huffman?
The fact, thank you, Chair, through you, the fact remains is that the clerk's office just doesn't have the resources to provide any more time to the police services board.
Right.
I find as a member that I get information in a timely manner. Our agendas are done with sufficient time. We always have the support that we need at our meetings in terms of having a staff from the clerk here. And I think it just needs to be made very clear to people that what we have is what we're getting, and there are no more resources to be had. Council, in fact, in terms of lightening the load for the clerk's department, we have had to make some major concessions in terms of agendas and not getting printed out agendas and delivered to our houses and things like that, because it's just so time consuming, and that's where it is. So what we got is what we got.
I respect that, Vice Chair Huffman, but if I could just add to this, I think it's imperative that we understand that we're limited, very limited. And I'm okay with it, but it would be nice to have a little bit more. It just makes easier on staff and on board members. That's why I bring this to the attention with regards to the budget, but that could be for another day.
My computer's working, so I'll share the budget.
Because I just want everybody to realize that you know, we're not a committee of council. We're governed under the Police Services Board and under the Police Services Act, I'm sorry. So we are arm's length. But if we do require assistance and we're asking for assistance, one would think that we speak of it. It's important to have an open dialogue. And as the chair of the Police Services Board, and Mr. Plant is doing the best he can under his circumstance, but he's limited. He's very limited. So, for example, this morning I got my notes. You know, I usually get them a week or two before, but he's doing well under the circumstances. The agenda usually, from past experience, was 2 weeks prior. I get them basically within a week. So it is what it is. But under the circumstances, this is where we're at. So next month, elections are coming up. So whoever takes the role of chair has to be clearly open to understand that it's just not a quick, and I don't expect much, but it's important that we're all informed and we communicate well again. So, sure. Okay, thank you.
The budget.
The budget arrives.
I'll shoot that. Here it is. My email says. Anyway,
It's not just mine.
you want me to show you anything different, Michael? Is that okay?
No, I don't know why the
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
watermark's on there, but, so yeah, the items that we were talking about for just for the Police Services Board would be, if you can somewhat see it there, the salaries and benefits line.
Your decreases, so it shows, highlight your decreases.
You scroll over a bit here. To the, right there, yeah. So salaries and benefits are unchanged, the materials and supplies are unchanged. The services I'll skip over, As I had mentioned earlier, that's for the contract portion of it. And then the $8,000 that you mentioned for the board is in there still. The incremental charges, as we just discussed, for clerks is the driver for that one. And then there's $5,000 for infrastructure funding, which is a transfer to a reserve. That's unchanged from prior year. And there's at the very bottom, Aaron, $50,000 on the revenue side from fees and service charges in there. That also is unchanged.
So Mr. Van Sinkle, the 50,000 surplus, is those charges as a result of the false alarms?
That's right.
So are we talking in 2022?
Sorry, that's budget to budget, so no actuals in there. In the first, under the first column area, there's actually a forecasted actuals amount of 55,000, so a slight surplus of $5,000 is expected for 2022.
There's a surplus of 5,000?
Yep.
And where do those monies go? Go back into the coffers?
I believe that's the reserve contribution, but I would have to double check that if it's not contributing to the Norfolk County contingency fund. I'm sure that it's more of the reserve contribution would be increased.
Are there any questions so far? Member Van?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we had in previous years, I believe, is we had just a small budget. Very, very small budget that we as a police board, the big one, we don't have any control over.
No.
It's equations, it's right?
That's correct.
So it was just a small budget that we have, but I'm not clear of how much money we have in there. I'm not clear how much we have left to spend. Just an example, we would give, I think, $2,500 of that money to Crenshaw.
That's correct.
And they even asked, could we go up a little because it's been froze there forever and ever. Just one example. We had some money left over. I think we gave some for a tent that they would use at fairs or right.
That's right.
Signs.
And a radar device?
So right now, I'm not clear on what we have as a board to work with. So, and we can maybe do it for another meeting, but I don't have a financial statement on it. I need to review it before I come to the meeting to understand, sure, exactly what we've got to work with. So I suggest, let's get that clear picture like we used to have before,
Right.
so we know what we got to work with. Now, another thing we would have to, it was in your email, Mr. Chairman, in relationship to the conference in Niagara Falls, we always sent 2 people there. That was in the budget to send either 2 people physically there or have 1 physically and 2 by Zoom or whatever. So we need to know that in order to make those decisions, right? Well, how much do we have in the budget? Is that in the budget for that? And I have no idea based on this, what our budget is or how much we have in it. So I think we need, like we had before.
They're good questions. Those 2 questions are excellent. Those questions have been asked since 2019, 2020, 2021, and again in 2022. I don't even know if we have a bank account. The bank account was canceled at the CIBC, so we don't have a bank account. Anything that goes through Norfolk County. I don't know how much is there other than what we've heard this morning. So I believe the clerk's department is trying to straighten things out and has over the last several months because of all the change we've had in the last several years.
Okay.
But that's my understanding.
I need an answer.
Well, I'm aware of that, but I haven't gotten one, and I don't think I'll get one during my term. Sorry, Councilor.
Okay, to you. Is there not an operating budget separate? So where's the sheet that says our committee, this is our incomes, these are our expenses? Where is that actual signal for?
Yeah, so I shared with Aaron, so I can share the committee one as well. But just to go over that again, there's no changes other than that clerk's line that I talked about.
Yeah, I don't need to know that. What I need to know is to see the actual operating budget of the committee. So in every sense of accounting, each committee would have its own setup. income and expenses. So if we could see that operation sheet.
Yep, I'll share it with Aaron.
And just so the board is aware, we have till mid-January, correct?
To present that.
To present.
Yes.
Yeah, and I believe Vice Chair Huffman and I had agreed, correct, on the 8,000?
Mm-hmm.
We're clear with that, no problem.
Yep.
But I'd like to know where it goes. What's your sense of where is it going, what our costs are?
I'd also like to know where that money is going to from, of course, false alarms. Because any revenue that comes through either POA or whichever goes into a special fund.
Yeah.
Don't we get an income also from the sale of?
Bicycles, yeah, that's correct. But
So you
unfortunately,
want to see that?
Yeah, income expense,
That's all I'm
exactly to your point.
Yeah, so for actuals, I don't have anything that I can really share today, but
Okay, no problem.
just budget wise.
so Mr. Van Sinkle, if you can go back to the county clerk and request, hopefully if we meet in either January or February, that we can have a breakdown and some clear understanding. I know it's been asked in the past and we haven't gotten it, and I know there's been a lot of change, but it's like beating a dead horse, asking the same question over and over.
Is it the finance department? I mean, it's not the clerk. No, it's the finance department we have to get. And it goes through the clerk's office to get it back to us.
If I may, it's my clear understanding from being on the police service board for the last 3 years is that we're giving a limited budget. And as that budget usually we're supposed to have a clear understanding each and every month of it, and it hasn't come to us. There's been so many different accounts, so we've had to close one account, open another, close one, open another. It's like a shell game. So now it's come to the point where we ask the question, how much is in the account? I always turn to Aaron. Aaron says I have to turn to my clerk. And so Mrs. Olson will tell us, and this is what's happening here. And it has been happening since 2019. So at the end of the day, there was a time where the inspector or the chief would hand a check at each meeting of $100, $1,000, $300, whatever came out of these auctions would go into a special account. That account was going into this, or those monies were going into the CIPC, not into Norfolk County. Yes. So then everything's changed since I think July the 15th. And here we are, December the 12th, asking the same questions. So, and the reason, Councilor Linda, is I ask this question is because Mrs. Olson is very well aware of what's happening, and she's basically been the flag person here to basically stop, go, this is what we're doing, and where we're at, and then of course those directions are given to our board administrator. In turn, they come to me and we follow through. So.
Well, I need a financial statement.
That's fair. Vice Chair Huffman.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I'd just like to put a motion forward then that at our next meeting, which would be in February, that we have a statement brought forward through the finance department as to what our budget is.
Okay, for 2023. Do we want to know what has happened in 2022?
No, let's just move forward with 2023.
Okay, that's fine.
Where we're starting, what we've got, and what we
So
would
we have a
spend
motion on
money
the
on.
floor. Do we have a seconder? Seconder? Okay.
Okay.
And all in favor? Yeah. Okay.
Let's
Carry.
Just
move on.
we had it last year, February 18, 2020, oh, that's 2021. So
That's
you
right.
had this is what you're at.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of need, and then it showed where the income came in, the expenses for the account where it falls.
Yeah, so
2,000 donation to Crime Stoppers, 1,000 to the spring conference, 1,200 for purchase of a tent for the OPP.
That was in 2019.
This is,
Yes.
so this is going back, but that we kind of needed. We expended 86,68,41 that year. So then we know what we can spend on that.
Mm-hmm.
Then we asked the chief of at least then is there some, and then that's what the 10 idea came up, you know, that might be a good
Right.
idea.
That's right.
If we had, because the funds are all meant to go back into the community, right?
That's correct.
Lots of ideas.
So now that we have that motion,
We're not gonna have much, but this.
so now that we have that motion, so Mr. Van Sickle, if you want to continue on or just finish up, that would be fine. But I think what we will need is the information at our February meeting.
Yeah, so we have a like roll-up kind of everything, so I can see the $8,000, that's all that I can see as a whole. So if you would like a breakdown of that, then yes.
Thank you. Right.
That's perfect.
And where our income is from and where it's.
What's the expansion? It'll be on the budget sheet itself.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions of the board to Mr. Van Sickle?
I think you're off the hook now.
Yeah, thanks for.
Mike, thanks very much.
Thanks for filling in.
Yeah, my apologies.
No
problem.
This is good, this is good. No,
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good conversation.
Yeah.
Open dialogue. Okay, so with that, if we can move on then to point number 8, reports deferred from the previous meeting. I wrote here 8.1, Chief Kay's verbal update with regards to robberies, community safety zones, and motor vehicle collisions. This, of course, was questions that I had posed to Chief back in September on the 28th, and you said you'd get back to us. So.
Okay, I believe that the question surrounding the community safety zones was in relation to the merit points. OPP has no control over the designation of demerit points or charges pertaining to tickets.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Okay, fair enough. And the other 2 questions, Chief, the answers, I believe, are on page 14 and 15.
So, yes.
Yeah, so on page 14 of 64 and page 15 of 64, the answers are pretty well there with regards to robberies and speeding. So there's enlightenment in regards to that. So I think that pretty well answers what we have. So in reference to the community safety zones, Chief, my question to you would be, I know that council has had 2 or 3 other safety zones put up in the last week or so. I believe one in Delhi. So
There's 2 in Norfolk County, that's it.
is that right?
Yeah.
It was my understanding from the research I did, Vice Chair Huffman, that there was one in Bloomsburg at the school. It's called the Community Safety Zone. And there was one in Port Dover on Hamilton Plank Road, Highway number 6.
There's only 2.
Was that right? Because the sign says Community Safety Zone.
We only had 2.
Okay. So, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
School zone?
Yes.
Yes.
It's a school zone, yeah.
That's why it's reduced.
Yeah.
So really, at the end of the day, those signs mean something, but unless they're enforced, they mean nothing.
Exactly.
Correct? So, my understanding from individuals that live on highway number 24, which is Colburn Village, Norfolk Street North, have questioned, well, the signs are up, speeding's still the same, what has changed? And I says, well, great question. So I looked at the stats and the patrols, and there has been patrols in that area. The general public might not see the officer or the officers, but from what I've read, when they have time, is that correct, Chief? There are people that, or officers that will go into these zones?
I'll go over to Staff Sergeant McCarthy to see, has more oversight over focus patrols, so I'll get him to explain what they are or how they come in and how we designate them.
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Chair, so for that area specifically, we get complaints, and as soon as we learned it was designated as a community safety zone, we decided to do our own focus patrol is what we call it. So basically that would be creating an occurrence where the sergeants every single shift will have to assign an officer or 2 to go do patrols in a certain area. So we do it for a variety of things, but this specifically would be for the speeding in that area. So that's where you get some of your data from that, with how often we've been there. In terms of tickets, it's something we could track as well. I don't know if we have that information here today. We can certainly try to bring something back to the board. But in essence, that's where our focus patrols are. We get a complaint. We will either grab our own data by way of a speed spy to see if there is a speeding concern, because sometimes it is just a perception. With that data, we can say, yes, there is a speeding concern, and then from there, we'll do our focus patrols and see how that works. Again, it is only a temporary fix. The speeding generally does continue.
Unfortunately, yes.
Unfortunately, it does, yeah. So it's certainly a fix for the 2 weeks or a month or however long we choose to do a patrol. And then from there, if the speeding continues, we have to, as a community, look at other ways to help reduce that.
On page 41, Staff Sergeant, and to the board, there was a focus patrol, and we referenced Norfolk Street North, the community safety zone. So from November the 3rd till December the 4th, my understanding is that the focus patrol occurrence was generated, and so that, of course, is something that has come up through various community members. So is that usually what happens and it opens up a focus patrol? It's a complaint? Or is it just a matter of saying we're going to be focusing on community safety zones for this month?
And through you, I would say generally, it is complaint driven.
Okay.
Or I shouldn't say generally, that's certainly a way that we can open up a focus patrol. I would say generally. That is certainly a way that we do respond to complaints, yes.
Okay. The reason I mentioned this is because I know previously that Vice Chair Huffman was one of the key members in requesting a community safety zone for that area. So I was just wondering if we've noticed an increase or a decrease, because I understand it, looking at my notes, the minimum speed was 78 kilometers an hour in a 60, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Correct, Vice Chair Huffman?
Yes,
And that's what
correct.
that really caused, the average speed was fairly high. And this has been a problem since I've been on the board, since 2019, and it will continue to be a problem because of the tone and the attitude of the drivers going from a 4-lane to a 2-lane. Councilor Linda?
Yeah, but it's not unique to a certain area, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. My major complaints or calls that I get is they're doing donuts in Cortland right on the 59. I mean, we've got speeding in the 50 zone in Langton. We've got, it's all over. It's all over, and I don't know what the next steps are. Sometimes I think we should have one of those video cameras in every vehicle that's speeding should get a ticket. My husband's totally against that. But what is the deterrent? Like, how are we going to get there if the majority of our calls are safety calls? What do we do?
Very good question. And I think the board and council and the OPP have done fairly well. Can we do better? We can always do better, but we're limited with officers and the calls.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, I know when complaints come through to myself or any member, they're sent off to the staff sergeants or to communications, and things are dealt with. From my past experience, I've seen excellent work in that regard, and usually that helps for a month or two, and then we're back to square one again.
That's my point.
Yes.
It's an ongoing issue. We have to find somehow, as you mentioned, a deterrent that how use it rather than not so.
And just so that you're aware, Councilor, I think this is pretty well throughout the whole province. This is just not a Norfolk County problem.
No.
But education and warnings and tickets, they do help. There's no doubt.
Well,
Chief, is that pretty well?
If through you, Chair, I can say we pulled some stats based on an email you sent me. I can say when we can do a more extensive search of tickets if there's a specific area that the Police Services Board wants us to report on, we can do that, but I need to know that ahead of time because there is a lot of work behind that. So the 12th of October, the community safety zone was approved. The 3rd, we started a focus patrol, so between the dates of the 3rd of November and the 4th of December, there were 3 warnings, 2 charges, and 2 other charges were mentioned, but like I said, we had a limited time to put these statistics together, these numbers together, so there could be more, but that's what I have right now.
Yeah, that's excellent.
But our officers are very much engaged in proactive enforcement in this county. I'm actually very impressed by the officers and their diligence to this. We do a lot of campaigning, Hospital Stand Check about our fatal collisions and all those things. Like the education is a big piece. I don't know what else we can do to educate people that speeding is a cause of fatal motor vehicle collisions. If that doesn't deter people and a ticket when we give it, I would say the fines are quite high. I'm not complaining about them, but I mean, hitting people there, I'd like to hope that would, but again, this has been an issue as long as I've been a police officer. So, yeah, jointly, I don't know,
Human
you know,
nature, it's unfortunate.
it's just, yeah.
But I believe that we're doing everything in our power, but more importantly, there is consistency and continuity from the OPP and I think from counselors with the interaction and education. So we're doing the best we can under the circumstances. Can we do better? We can always do better. But I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, and I believe both counselors and the vice chair, you hear more from the general public than we do because of your positions. But from my standpoint, I just divert and leave it to the professionals, and it's dealt with and one less headache, and we can move on, for sure. So do we have any other questions of our chief? If not, I'm going to ask a motion in regards to the update information. Vice Chair Huffman, and we need a seconder. Seconded by Member Van Houten. Okay, so we'll move on to the agenda. It is 11:15, so moving on to the agenda, we have here items for consideration. Number 9. 9.1, I'm going to leave this to the board administrator to present a memo and proceed with that if you can, Mr. Plant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the board. The information memo before you regarding the restructuring the Community Policing Committee. Norfolk County staff received direction to do a fulsome review of all of our committees and boards that are supported by the corporation, and one of them was, of course, the Community Policing Committee. This has already been discussed at this meeting already, I won't go into too much depth, but as you know, there was a motion by council to restructure the committee and look at future options. Chair Montgomery, of course, was here, was very helpful deputation. We're still working with the chair and board members to look at what this will look like going forward. At this time, the meeting is more or less on hiatus going forward. And I'm happy to receive feedback. The memo outlines the whole process that we undertook.
Okay, I'll have a quick question on the attachment, which is attachment B, which is the council and committee meeting that was on November the 16th. I printed this up. I don't believe it's with the agenda, but these are basically the notes and the recommendations. So the question that I have to yourself and to the county clerk basically is this. I mean, we're governed by the Police Services Act, and we're an oversight body of the OPP. So I just don't want council to direct us to say, well, we're going to look after the community policing. I think if we stick back to what I believe is simplicity, where individuals from different wards meet with the OPP, and if there's issues or concerns in the OPP, can bring those issues to us, and maybe keep a line of communication open, but we have to be very cautious because we are under the Police Services Act. We're not affiliated, even though, yes, we are because of the communication, but it's apparent, and I can ask our provincial member of Police Services, Mr. Tilley, to add to that, because when I researched and I looked over the Police Services Act, we have to be very cautious, because when we look at the wording and whatnot, they're like a board, and they're really not a board, they're a committee of council. And we have to.
Aaron?
Sorry.
Oh, did you want to say something? Like, I just wondered why you kept putting your hand up in the air.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Mr. Chair, just to respond to that. The function of this memo and this staff recommendation is not regarding the Police Services Board, as you mentioned, as governed by the Police Services Act. The Community Police Committee is a committee of Norfolk County Council, not the Police Services Board. There's a dotted line, but But because it is a committee of council, it isn't the jurisdiction of council to purview exclusively and how they want to deal with it. That's why we have to bring this recommendation forward to restructure it to council. It isn't to say that the police services board's opinion doesn't matter, rather to say that this is structurally a committee of council. And also,
No, and I just wanted to make a point, Chair, through you, that tomorrow when Mrs. Montgomery does her deputation to council, I will be making certain that the voice of this committee is heard and let council know as a whole that the Police Services Board and the OPP detachment support the Community Policing Committee. So we will do that and then move forward, so.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
and I think to build on that, it's not as if staff are saying that community policing is a critical service area and an important area. Rather, we're suggesting that perhaps a formal committee of council governed by this block with very strict regulation of how that committee is operating. It's very formal, it's open. Well, from my conversations with the members of the committee and also just from this deputation right now, it sounds like perhaps the vehicle for governance for the police service community police committee is not a formal committee of council. Maybe it's an association, maybe it's a forum. We're working to find that. We're going to bring a report forward to council, bring a direction from management. But really, the point was not to say that the committee report isn't important, rather that the vehicle is not the right one we're using.
Right.
It's not the right tool. And I think that was demonstrated by the fact that if you go to these meetings, there's very passionate people who care deeply about this community, but perhaps the formality of motions and clerking and all that is really not what they need to do.
No, it's not the right tool. Yeah.
So that's really some background information with that.
Mr. Chili, would you like to?
Sure. So my comments really are in relation to this, as you discussed, in regards to being a vehicle. I mean, when I first read this, and again, bear in mind I'm reading this from the kind of provincial legislation perspective, the mission and mandate to me reads as a police service board. So my immediate reaction was, why are you doing this? Like there seems to be an immediate conflict there between this potential committee and the police service board, because at the end of the day, the legislative relationship is between the board, the OPP, and then that is the board who reports to council. So as this is written in terms of reference, yeah, I would have significant concerns with how that kind of relationship works. So something perhaps more informal would make more sense, so we bring into potential conflicts with the act. So, I mean, and I just say, by example, if you have these community committees, and they are fairly common around the province, people call them citizen advisory panels, whatever, if there is a desire for, say, funds to do a certain project within an area, the appropriate place for that kind of request to come would be to the board could then bring that recommendation to the council, or if you have your own budget here to fund those kind of things, that's the process. So I just have concerns that there's kind of two policing committees reporting into the into county council. And I think, like I said, as it's written here, that was my immediate thought was, well, what are you creating here? So I would suggest a more informal process would be a far better place, but having some kind of relationship with the police service board would make sense in terms of what recommendations.
Thank you. Any other questions? So it's fairly clear, we move on. Okay, so do I have a motion to receive the information? Councillor? Yes, thank you. And seconded by Vice Chair. All in favor? Great, thank you. Okay, so moving on. So we go from 9.1 to 9.2. So, Mr. Plant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the board. The information memo regarding the proposed changing of the composition of the police services board before you. The Administrative Solicitor General recently sent correspondence to the county clerk asking for feedback from our council regarding what they want the composition of the police services board to look like. From my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, advisor, but under the Police Services Act, it's currently pretty specific on what the composition looks like, and the government is currently looking to see a more localized approach. Maybe the membership would be slightly different, maybe need more councillors, more community members, more provincial appointees, to think what is recommended. There's a report brought forward to council for feedback from councillors, and the motion that was passed is included that memo for you. And again, just to give some context, this is purely a recommendation to the ministry. This is not a demand, this is not even an ask, this is just saying this is some feedback from council. Ultimately, this is under the province's jurisdiction, they'll decide what they want to do with this. This is at the consultation stage, so that's a bit of background information.
So if I can ask a question, so when I look at this November 16th meeting, so staff recommended option 2 as outlined in the report, and council went with option number 1, correct?
One, I guess, yeah.
Right, so what I read here is, so option number 1, just so that all board members are aware, so we have 3 council members, 1 community representative, and 1 provincial appointee. Is that correct?
Yep, I believe that was what council decided.
And what I see here is those are the minimum requirements set out by the ministry. So when I had met with Mr. Plant, I had asked what created this. So I never received a letter, or we as a board didn't have any understanding of the Solicitor General's office and then opening up this information. So I'm just wondering, that the letter, did it specifically spell out these 3 options, or were there other options?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can't necessarily speak to private correspondence by the county clerk or that. It was sent specifically to the office of the county clerk and the council, not to the
From the Solicitor General.
Sorry, for the Solicitor General, thank you.
Well, and I respect that, because in the past, I believe it was June the 15th of 2021, I remember the Police Services Board being involved with somewhat the same. And then we were asked, the Police Services Board was asked, and then it went to council, and council sent that recommendation to the province. And here, I guess they bypassed the Police Services Board. And which is fine, I'm okay with that, sorry.
They're not bypassing the police services board. At the end of the day, it's a decision of council.
Yes.
So that's the reason why when it got to the heads of council, it was then the decision was that any kind of local consultation would be handled by council. So if the board's part of that, then that's their decision to make, but the decision is council's.
So Mr. Tilley, in the past, the Police Service Board was involved, so now it's directed right to council?
Well, no, you would have been sent, the previous correspondence would have come to the police service board as a kind of copy to.
Copy to.
Yeah,
Okay.
but the actual discussion regarding the
decision
decision is council's, yes.
Very good.
And that has been mentioned by a few other police service boards, the fact they weren't copied into it, so I imagine that's something that can be rectified. But the assumption would be at the local level, the information would have flowed.
The reason I bring this point up, and it's open dialogue, is when I look at this, I'm thinking, okay, you got 3 council members, you've got 1 community representative, you've got 1 provincial appointee. So voting, I mean, councillor members, so you've got 3 politicians, 1 community representative, and 1 person appointed by the province. So I'm looking at this thinking, okay, well, in the past, it was 1 council member, and, oh no, sorry, 2 council members, if I'm not mistaken. So it's either the mayor or the deputy or a councillor.
Right.
And 1 community representative, so for example, Mr. Cruz, and then 2 provincial appointees. So that was a good balance, but from what I gather now, that's what the council has recommended. We'll see what the minister's office has to say, but it's very clear. So it was just news to me, that's all. So I bring that to the board. Sorry, member Van Houten?
Yeah, if I had to choose, they would ask me, I wouldn't choose option 1, I would choose option 2. Either way will work, just for continuity purposes, but I think the Solicitor General's office is going to make the final determination. It's not our night to speak in, because it's asked the council, in all honesty.
Yes.
I thought I'd sneak in anyway, in my opinion, without going in that way. But it's not our decision, right? So either way it will work.
Yeah.
It's serious. It's going to be bigger than these little municipalities. They work out better than some other situations that are out there. Hope and I would even like from contacts with all the other boards around us. So whichever way they decide, it'll work. We'll be all right.
I just bring that up to the board.
Yeah.
Just so that everybody's on the same page. Sorry.
Just to remember that a council member is also a community member. that we speak for the community, because people in our wards know us, and they know, believe me, when it comes to a police issue, they will call a counselor
Oh, gosh.
very quickly. So regardless, not as a politician, but yet as a community member, it has to be something that has to be forefront of people's minds.
Well, and thank you, Chair, and through you, and just to make the assumption in terms of not, yes, grouping the councillors as politicians and person it more as community members. I mean, there isn't a political appointee, so that's a political appointment right there. So I think there's, you know, there's no way to take anything.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
This is open dialogue, and this is good. This is important, but yeah, thank you for your comments, for sure. Okay,
All right.
very good. Any other questions of our board administrator? Seeing none, if I can have another motion, please, to receive information from Mr. Plant. Member Cruz, seconded by Councilor Linda. All in favor? Worry, Councilor, I'll have your last name figured out. I apologize.
I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay,
Let's see what is coming.
9.3, I added that earlier, Grand Erie School Board. I bring this to everyone's attention only because Chief and Staff Sergeant, I don't know if you have a copy of that report, or I shouldn't say report, it was from the Grand Expositor. This has to do with the...
Yes, sir, we're well aware.
You're well aware.
It's been going for quite some time. I can't remember the date, but
Since the pandemic.
we are well aware that we're not Grand Erie District School Board's position on police officers being here in the school.
Is that right?
Yep.
The reason I bring that to everyone's attention is it was brought to my attention through a question from the media, and I had no idea what was taking place. I took it for granted because we do have 3 school boards. We have a French school board, we have a Catholic, and we have a public. So I took it for granted that the OPP officers were going in and out of the schools and communicating on various levels. I took that for granted. And when I was asked, it threw me for a loop.
Well, Chair, this has been an issue not just in Norfolk, it's been an issue across the province.
Is that right?
Yes.
Sorry. Councilor, Vice Chair Huffman, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Through you, I just want to offer kind of more of my 2 cents worth. I had 2 children who were in the separate school system at Holy Trinity who were a part of the student population that had officers in the school. Now I'm speaking as a white middle-class female with 2 children who come from that demographic. I didn't have a problem with it. I thought it was a great relationship kind of thing. But then as time has kind of come to pass, I do have a different appreciation for it. I still think there's definitely a role for it, but I think it's very important that we're cognizant that there is a population out there who is extremely uncomfortable with this programming, and that it can cause issues for individuals who are minorities. I'm not saying it does, but there is a perception from the individuals that there is an issue. So I think there's room for some improvement. I don't think we need to quote unquote throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I think when you're looking at it from a certain demographic, it's a very easy answer, but when you look at it from another lens, there's more to it than that. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you.
But today, we're looking at Toronto area. They're looking and calling for increase to be more prevalent in schools because of the situations, and those are coming from the students. I saw it on the news, and students are feeling uncomfortable and fearful. So I agree with Councillor Huffman. I think there has to be a mix there. There's going to have to be some solutions made and some investigation on how can we make this more balanced. And I understand that point, but at the end of the day, you're seeing much more violence in the schools today, unfortunately, and something has to be addressed. students are fearful. So when students are afraid to go to school, we have to make sure we take a real serious look at how we can mitigate that. It's important to them.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments here?
I just have one,
Sorry, go ahead.
just so you know that we do respond to calls for service there. So that does not change.
No.
Any calls for service, we do. It's just the proactive type. Anything that we've done traditionally is based on the reviews that we won't be in there until such time that they decide, make a decision as to what that looks like. Although we are in the Catholic school system in Norfolk County.
So this is just with the Grand Erie board, correct?
In this county.
In this county,
Yes.
Norfolk County, which encompasses Brantford, Alden, Norfolk,
Yes,
and Six Nations, I believe.
Six Nations would do their own.
Their own
So they have board.
Yeah.
Okay, because I thought they were, no, okay, that's fair. Again, this is all new to me, and I was asked for comment, and I was brought up with a police officer in our schools, both elementary, so you talk about Elmore, the safety elephant, you talk about not using influence people, which is VIP. I have 3 children, and they all went through the French system. They went through, which is a Cool St. Marie here in Simcoe, and they also went through Holy Trinity. And I'm a product of SES, so the Grand Erie board. So we've hit all school boards. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, putting a program like this on pause, first of all, you've got the pandemic, you've got COVID-19, and I understand that. Then you put this program on pause. The children aren't interacting with officers, and I think it's imperative and crucial that they do, because there's relationships. I think back to when I was a teenager. You had Constable DiSerrano, you had Constable Perrier, you had Constable Mark Foster, Ed Crawford, and these names come to me because these are individuals that worked with us within the community. You either saw them at church, you saw them in the schools, you saw them at a basketball game or a soccer game. This is all imperative. So for the board to put everything on pause, I am not in favor of it. But that's my comment. But I've heard Vice Chair Huffman, what you have to say, and Councilor Linda in regards to that. And now I'll put the floor over to Member Cruz.
I grew up in the Catholic school system in Hamilton area. We always had an officer in the school, and like you, Chair, we had Elmer the safety elephant. We had the officer do bicycle safety, and we got licenses on our bikes through the police officer there, and we grew up to respect the officers, and there was a communication there. We felt safe, and also we knew that the police officers or the police was a place to go when we needed help. That's the way we grew up. I think now demographics have changed. In Hamilton, the officers were removed from the schools as a result of, I think it started with the defunding police type things and other demographic issues too. So the school boards removed the officers, but I think the situation is a cyclical situation. It will be a cyclical situation. Communication still needs to continue between the police, the citizens, and the school boards. And I think also that once that communication is ongoing, it will come around to officers being asked back into the school. I don't know when, because there is a safety issue now in schools, and we're seeing it all over. We're hearing it, unfortunately, in the news. A lot of things are happening in schools, and not very nice things, and that probably wouldn't have happened with officers in the school. So I think it's a loss for the students currently. I really do, and I think that down the road with continued communication, it will come back to officers coming back to the school. Again, I don't know. It might be as soon as that.
Thanks for your comments. You've instilled hope, which is excellent, which is required.
Yeah.
For sure. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll take that as information. And, we'll need a mover and a shaker. A mover and a second, I'm sorry. Oh my goodness.
I prefer the shaken.
Okay, so who's moving? So we have a mover first. You move and.
I'll shake it.
Thank you, all in favor? Okay, it's carried. That was a little bit of humor, thank you very much. Thank you, Vice Chair. And the members, so we'll move on to correspondence arising from the previous business. Is there any correspondence?
Set future dates.
It's a very good question. I actually had the opportunity to set some dates with the board administrator, and it came back that it was too early to set those dates. So that was left up to, again, the county clerk. Correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the board. It is standard practice to approve the dates of the meeting for the first meeting of the year. So we'll have that memo all ready for you. We'll bring that forward to the January meeting. I believe we had discussed it at the January meeting. That date was for my meeting.
We meet every 2 months, I just figured February.
My phone is off. I don't have a calendar in front of me. I believe it was the 4th week, so it was the last Wednesday of the month, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's typically when it is.
And just so that everybody is aware, the first month of the Police Services Board and Norfolk Police Services Board is elections. So, sorry,
Yeah, I'll be away, at the end of the month, so I was kind of hoping that the first of February start. But it's up to, I'd like to be here.
Councilor, do you know roughly when you're leaving? Because we didn't have it like a week prior.
Yeah, I'm leaving on the 13th.
Or do you want the 13th? Okay. I'll leave it up to the board. Do you want to meet in February?
Oh, okay.
I'm open. I'm open.
You're open?
Yeah, I can attend virtually.
So councilors,
I would wait till,
yeah,
I wait till February.
we'll wait till February.
When do you come back?
On the 31st, I think I'm on.
Oh, okay. So we could go February 1st.
Is that okay, Chief?
I think so, I think I'm gonna take that. So I'll check my flights out. Schedule.
I'm just looking at the calendar.
I think it's imperative that we do meet within the next month and week, or possibly first week of February. The reason being is to,
To get business going.
yeah.
Understand.
Yeah.
Are you the 31st coming home?
I think so.
Then we'll go next week after.
Okay, we went February, first week of,
Tuesday's the 7th.
We're always on a Wednesday.
is that the
Oh, well, on a Wednesday, the 2nd
Wednesdays.
would be fine.
second?
Is that it?
First.
No,
Oh,
it's
that's
the 1st,
the-
February
sorry.
1st.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm not sure.
Yeah, so let's work with February the 8th. Is that fair? That gives us, is that okay, Chief? Staff Sergeant? Okay, so let's pick February the 8th.
Yeah,
And-
you know your council meetings?
Yeah, we're free that day. Yeah, our councils are Tuesdays.
Yeah,
So the day before we have planning and Board of Health.
yeah,
So we're good.
So for all members, what I'll do is I'll prepare the agenda, and hopefully we'll have all the minutes, everything ready to go, and then we'll start off with the elections.
February 8th.
Okay. So February the 8th. Hopefully we'll be here at council chambers.
If the election.
Do you want to just put that? Or-
I
have no idea.
I'll put it in the calendar first.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Richard, please.
well, thank you for your company. I appreciate
Oh,
it.
for sure.
I'd like to be physically.
No, it's imperative, because I mean, we're voting in
Yeah.
the chair, the vice chair,
I
and,
don't need your name, Stan, right? Just chair like that. I don't want to surprise
I was just thinking.
well,
you. know what I mean?
Councilor Transit, she wasn't, we had the meeting February 1st, she'd be the chair.
Oh, that's nice.
I'm kidding, I'm just kidding.
I just
it's very much open. I mean, listen,
Oh, yeah, well, I'm just saying that, because if somebody is not gonna run, it makes you know, you know what I mean? I'm
I
hoping you do, anyway.
I plan not to.
What?
Yeah, I plan not to,
Not to what?
to run as chair.
Mm.
Oh, does everybody know that?
No, I.
Oh, okay.
Like, we're talking
No,
about
it's
that.
so.
So it's something that.
I'm interested.
Oh, good, okay, that's the only reason why I asked, I know you're not supposed to, but.
Exactly. Up front, so you're the vice chair, Huffman, if you're more than interested, I have no problem.
Okay.
I think it's important to just get setting a tone.
Which you will really hear, that's
It's important,
important.
so, yeah.
Look at Michael, he's like, not me, not me.
Chair,
Good,
through
right?
Chair Santos, Vice Chair Hoffman, you
Yeah.
raised a question at last police services board
Yes.
meeting regarding the sex assaults. I just wanted to address that. So, between January 1st and the 8th of December this year, there was 8 unfounded.
And I didn't find it.
Yeah, okay.
That means they came to you and you found no basis. Is that what that is?
Yeah, no basis to lay a terminal.
Exactly.
Yes, yes,
Okay, I
yes.
get it.
Accusations as well, right?
Well, I don't wanna say that,
No.
we would not wanna say that.
No,
So,
okay.
we're just saying that
Just
they're
unfounded.
unfounded, no basis to lay a
Okay.
charge.
Okay.
So that was in the month of October.
No, it's from January to the 8th of December.
Thank you.
So again, if that's something you like regularly reported on, that has to be asked.
Oh,
You wouldn't
okay.
normally just pull
You
that.
wouldn't normally pull that, okay. All right, well, we can give some thought to that
Okay.
and what, okay. Well, if there's 8, and that's through almost a whole year, that's probably not something that you need to worry about reporting on monthly.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on. Question or point number 11, media question period. So if there's anyone here from the media, any questions, we're open. If not, we will move on and ask for an adjournment. So I'm going to have a motion. Okay, motion by Member Cruz, seconded by Member Van Houten. All in favor?
Willingly.
Okay, it's carried.
Thanks a lot.
I want to wish
Thank you.
everyone a Merry Christmas.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Nice meeting everyone.
Yeah, yes.
Nice to meet you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor, and welcome.
Yeah, I think I recognize you.
That's why I heard that you're the queen of the by-election.
Oh, yeah, I'm a by-election member, yeah.
Yeah, that's what they had referred to. I'm thinking, okay, interesting.
Um,
We were school board together, back and forth.